And the first panel discussion will be on global expectation for Sri Lanka tourism development from ambassadors, representatives from tourist origin countries. So I would like to invite our panel chair, Her Excellency Shani Karnaratne, Deputy Chief of Mission, Minister, the Embassy of Sri Lanka, Beijing. His Excellency Mr. Tung Lai Mark, Ambassador and Head of Delegation, European Union to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, our panelist. Her Excellency Ms. Joanne Donaward, Ambassador to the Kingdom of Netherlands, and Her Excellency Saroja Sirisena, Director General Economic Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Sri Lanka.
Honorable Ministers, Venerable Mahasangha, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today, our topic is Global Expectations for Sri Lanka Tourism Development. You know, however much any country thinks they are successful in their tourism promotion, we may all, my panel and I, we all in the audience, we agree that there is always scope for further development on tourism sector. This is because this is a very competitive market. Situations change, expectations of people change, income levels change, and our competitors improve, forcing others to follow suit. Also, there are continuous evolution of tastes and aspirations. All of you may agree with me that Sri Lanka's biggest capital asset is location, weather, and nature. We are also a friendly nation. But this alone is not sufficient. How do we make it really a sought-after market leader of a destination? Today we have our eminent panel to discuss their thoughts with all of us. His Excellency Ambassador from the European Commission, Her Excellency Ambassador from the Netherlands, Her Excellency Saroja Sirisena, my dear friend, who did her last posting was to Bombay in India. All of them have a wealth of experiences and they have done observations which in our academia we call empirical studies. So let us walk through their experiences and observations. And I will ask my first question. This is just the opening from Madam Saroja Sirisena. As an opening, Madam Saroja, shall we start with your observations of the Indian tourism industry? And as an opening, you can select some point as a beginning point to say, compared to Sri Lanka, what improvements we can learn from Indian experience?
Thank you, Shani, my colleague from the Foreign Ministry. And I would also first like to congratulate the organizers, the Colombo University, the Ministry of Tourism, and other stakeholders for the 4th consecutive Global Tourism Summit, Tourism Leaders Summit. And to address what the moderator has asked me of India, well, actually, if we look at the experience of India, Sri Lanka is perhaps a better performing tourism destination because in terms of numbers and size, compared to our size, I mean, India is many times the size of Sri Lanka and has a diverse number of attractions. But Sri Lanka, given its size and given the strategic location and our connectivity, we have been able to actually surpass per capita what we gain in tourism. So if you look at India, I would just take it in a little bit different way, Shani, if you don't mind, and look at Indians, how Indians look at Sri Lanka. From India perhaps is the best connected country to Sri Lanka, and we are culturally similar. We have similar interests, similar cultural habits, clothing, food habits. So this perhaps gives us an advantage for the less traveled Indians when they feel a little bit nervous to travel outside into the big wide world, because India, as you know, is a country which has an ever increasing middle class. And those who enter the middle class, traveling out for the first time, find Sri Lanka to be a safe destination, not too different, not too alien from their culture. So that is perhaps one of our advantages, and it's close. I mean, from every single Indian destination, the flight to Sri Lanka is less than 3 or 4 hours at the max. So the connectivity and the familiarity attracts India to us. But I think what we need to also focus, because India is the #1 inbound market for us, we need to focus a little bit more on the upper echelons of the Indian traveler. Because, as the minister said before, we need to stay away from the tourism pitfalls of over-tourism and exhausting our resources. So in this aspect, we need to focus a little bit more on the upper echelons of tourism to increase the income generated from the individual tourist. So India perhaps is one of the, after China perhaps, is one of the highest spending tourism generating markets for us.
Thank you, Madam Saroja. Actually, India is our highest number of tourist arrivals are from India. China comes second.
I meant the spending.
Yes. Thank you very much. Now we will give the floor to Madam Joanna. Madam Joanna, you come from a lovely country, the Netherlands. And I would like to ask you, what things, especially if you could let our audience know about utilizing the waterways on part of the tourism sector, which is something your country is experts on.
Thank you. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, Subu Desanak. Indeed, the Netherlands, I mean, we are a small country, but last year we saw an increase of 25% of Dutch tourists coming to this country. So I think we're number 10 right now. But what I see as, what I hear back from my companions, that they really love to go around. They come here for the experience. If you look at the average stay here in Sri Lanka, it's 1 to 2 weeks. And I think a lot of Europeans, and especially the Dutch, they don't like to stay at one place for 2 weeks. They like to travel around. And what this country offers is really something, an experience. Within 1 week, you get a lot to offer. And 2 weeks even more. And the hospitality. And going around, they're not looking for 5-star hotels. They just look to see what's happening in the local community. The hospitality there, the local food, the friendly faces. That's really what they like. And the easiness where you can travel around here with a driver who's also your guide, who takes you to the best places, who gives you background information. These kind of things are really very an asset, I think, for Sri Lanka. I know Booking.com is Dutch as well. They have seen also that. And I must say, I mean, if you look at the Dutch tourists, if they book a flight, if they want to go to a certain country, they go to the internet. They don't go that much to a travel agency. They go to the internet. And they have Sri Lanka in their mind, and they just Google that. And then, I mean, also for me, when I want to travel around here, I go to TripAdvisor. I want to see a certain place, I go to TripAdvisor. And I look at the experience of other guests about that place. And then you make up your mind and you book it. So, being on the internet, I mean, I saw the first speaker. I mean, that was very interesting to see. That's very, very important, I think, for the future. The other thing that I would like to mention when I get back, that people who travel around here, they are environmental, very much aware what's happening. That you have to carry or buy plastic bottles, and that you see these plastic bottles behind the hotels, stuck up in high piles. They would love to contribute to a more sustainable way of tourism. If you could organize something that you could refill those bottles in the hotels, instead of being handed out all the time, all these plastic bottles. Ecotourism is really something this country could use, and you're already doing that. But really preserve that. If you want to reach the 4 million tourists, please take care that your country can survive that in a sustainable way. Because the big asset that people come for is also your nature reserves and the way that this country looks like. So that would be my advice. And last thing, indeed, I heard the Honourable Minister mentioning something, cooperating with the European airlines again. KLM is coming again in November with a few direct flights from Amsterdam to Colombo. And those are full with tourists who are going to spend money here. And as a last point, I would like to mention heritage tourism. You have 3,000 years of history, and that's beautiful, but there's also part of shared history that we have. So we look together how we can develop that further. We have, as an example, an app being launched that's being developed with the local people. We do that worldwide in places like Yangon, Jakarta, and other places, that we work together with the local people to develop an app that you walk around to hear more from the local people, the history of that place, and that gives you advice where to go and where not to go. And that's for free, and we see a lot of opportunities there as well. So that will be launched in November together with Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Joanna. That was quite a lot. We now go to our ambassador from the European Commission. Mr. Ambassador, would you like to enlighten us about the tourism between the European Commission, you know, from Union, yes, European Union, the tourism, internal tourism that you have, because you are visa-free travel for your member countries, and people come and they exchange a lot of tourism activities. Is it recorded, and is it... if I've asked you more, I mean, if my question is too direct, I ask you to feel free to speak on a chosen topic, yes?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to say a few words about the number of, the percentage of tourists coming from European countries to Sri Lanka. Absolutely. And it's quite an important percentage. If you take only UK, Germany and France, it makes, coming from Europe, something like 41 of all tourist arrivals in Sri Lanka. Yes. And I think this is going to expand in the future. So I would say you should focus in promoting your country in all the European countries. We are 28 countries for the moment, 27 next year, but there will be new candidate countries coming in later within 5 years. So I would say focus and diversify, not only looking at the main countries that I mentioned, meaning UK, Germany, and France. By the way, Italy is also a big country in terms of tourism coming from that country. Diversify through advertising. I mean, we mentioned that obviously there are new ways of communicating now, not the traditional leaflets that don't work. People like to go on the internet and find out by themselves. It was very interesting to hear that so many people were relying nowadays on experiences, on videos from other tourists. I think that's probably a lasting trend. What I would like to say also is that in the line of what my colleague was mentioning about improving the quality of the accommodation, the clean beaches, we launched an event, the EU delegation here together with other UN agencies to clean beaches. How important it is to have clean beaches, because tourists like to come and see places that are clean. If they see dirt, if they see litter, garbage, it will make bad publicity for your country. And there are so many nice places that are intact, but then that need to be protected. I would like to say a word also about the transport. Obviously, transport within Europe, since you mentioned Europe, has facilitated greatly more tourism, intra-tourism between European countries. And Sri Lanka must improve its infrastructure in terms of transport, because, you know, if you have got 10 days per year, and if you know that it will take you perhaps 4 days to travel in one country, maybe people will choose not to come to Sri Lanka, but go to other places where it's easier. I would also like to insist on the safety part. It's true that Sri Lanka has got a good reputation where tourists feel safe. And you will remember that when there have been the terrorist attacks in countries such as Tunisia or indeed Egypt, immediately tourists decided not to come anymore. And the drop was considerable. So that's something you need to reflect on. Ensure that the tourists remain safe. Sometimes we hear about incidents, certain violences that took place, unfortunately. I know even relating to certain Dutch tourists, this must not be possible anymore. There should be a lot of vigilance on that. Finally, I think you can improve also the professionally trained workforce. In particular, if you want to increase the objective to 4 million tourists by 2020, you need to make sure that there are more professionals, that they are well trained, and of course there must also be offers, adequate offers in terms of housing, hotels, but not only the traditional hotels. I would like to insist on that also. There are other ways to make tourists come, and therefore focus also, I would say, on the sustainable wellness tourism. This is an angle that is very interesting from the European perspective. This type of tourism is what we like to have, and people are ready to come to Sri Lanka for that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We again would go back to my dear colleague, Saroja. Saroja, shall we discuss something about internal flights within the country? Internal planes, flights like in India. If you want to go from one city to another, you would take a plane, and instead of going by road, there are advantages in doing that. China is also the same. We travel everywhere by plane. Very little travel is done by road. Something about internal travel?
Thank you. Well, Shani, the thing is, Sri Lanka is a small country, and perhaps internal travel between maybe the furthest points would be an advantage. But I don't think internal travel is an impediment at present. It could be made better, obviously, maybe flights between Colombo and Trinco, between the southernmost point and Jaffna, between Galle and Jaffna, but I think connectivity is one of our advantages at the moment. We are pretty well connected via road network. I mean, a few years, maybe a decade ago, we didn't have the Southern Expressway, so it took us 4 hours. And a tourist who had a span of, say, 5 days to travel in Sri Lanka would only be able to visit one city, at best 2. And Colombo was a neglected city. Since the end of the war, we've also developed the infrastructure in Colombo. So Colombo is a city now that people actually spend a day or two. Because Colombo now offers city attractions. This is something that we couldn't focus on during the time of the war because we didn't spend enough money on infrastructure. It was not possible for us to spend money on infrastructure. So these are added attractions. And whilst it would be for the higher end tourists, we have the seaplanes, people who are pressed for time. So between Colombo and Kandy, there are seaplanes, and this is also something that we operate. We need to expand it, of course, if we're looking at higher end tourism. But I think just to head back to a little bit to your point before about what we could learn from India, one thing I would say is the services industry. I mean, people engaged in tourism in India actually want to be there. This is something, since it's a largely Sri Lankan audience and engaged in the tourism industry, I'd like to say that some of our employees in the services, in the hospitality services industry are there as a stepping stone for something better. It is not what they want to do. You can see it at the time of requesting assistance, asking for a service. People need to be there because they want to be there, because they value the service, because they want to be of service. That is the key to the hospitality industry. You can't be there because it's for the want of something better. So I think that's the key point. I mean, we are a welcoming nation, a hospitality-driven nation, but that little extra bit, you know, people, when they pay for hospitality, they want top-class service. So that is professional service, as Ambassador to the European Union also pointed out, that we need to, when we're looking at increasing numbers, we need to increase the quality of our service.
Thank you, Saroja. We'll ask Madam Joanna. Now, you see, tourists from different cultures come, and their expectations are different. In a European point of view, what kind of accommodation do you think would be recommended for a kind of middle-income traveler?
I think, as I mentioned, we don't go for the 4 or 5 star hotels for most. The people like to travel around. They might pick during their stay one very luxury, nice place. But the diversity, I think, it should be clean. That's the main point. And it should be value for money. I mean, if you spend 1 week in Sri Lanka, for that amount of money, you can right now spend 3 weeks in Thailand and having 4-star hotels. So, I mean, Sri Lanka is quite expensive. They offer a lot, but you really have to look at the quality and also, indeed, at the service. If you have the feeling, I mean, most of the people are very friendly. But yeah, they should be there to take pride in their work and to be there to help you. And especially if you compare it, indeed, to Indian hotels or Maldivian, there's still a way to go, I think. But generally, the people are very hospitable here, very friendly, especially these small homestays. And I think the Honourable Minister managed that. Don't exclude the backpackers. I mean, they go around, they spend money, they go here for the experience, like kite surfing, the Ayurveda. You have so much to offer, but also to climb mountains. And I'm still waiting for the cycling. I mean, the Dutch right now have to organize their own trip if they want to go on a bike. Yeah, I mean, they bring the bike. But I mean, there's so much opportunities that entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka could develop and work together with the Dutch or other. But I mean, that's what tourists from Europe like, to experience, to do things, to go around the Pearl. I know there's this kind of trip to advertise these kind of activities. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. And also to have, like, I know in Delhi, I know in Jakarta, I know in Bangkok, you have this opportunity to go on your bike early in the morning with a guide, go around. I mean, I haven't seen it here yet. If I was an entrepreneur, I would go for that kind of thing. But that's just one of the suggestions. And about internal transport, I just want to mention, I went yesterday to Jaffna by a little plane. It's outrageous expensive, but we had to go there because we had just 1 day. If you would develop that further, I mean, in India, you can just fly for 2 hours and it's like 80 euros. I mean, here you have to spend like 1,000 euros to go to just to Jaffna. I mean, it's so you need the private sector to compete and to open up that, but also to prevent having all these internal planes going. I mean, that's not environmental friendly. Also to upgrade your railway system. I mean, I think the activity that stands out is this little train ride going in the mountains there. from Kandy to Nonaoya. I mean, that's the thing right now. And you could see one of the sites that was being consulted on the internet is the railway here, because people want to book their tickets to be on that train, second class, first class, third class, just to go through those mountains, to have that experience. Because on the internet, that's the thing to do here. So to facilitate that, and yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to go there. But also in your transport sector, to make it possible to go to Jaffna by train, a fast train, and not 6 hours. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Joanna. Ambassador Tong Lai, I just ask you, you know, each country has their own way of speaking English. Do you think, in your own opinion, the Sri Lankan English spoken here in the tourism industry, does it need improvement, or do you think you understand when people speak to you?
I don't think that it's a major problem, frankly. But what you need in terms of training people in the tourism service industry is people who will be able indeed to be fluent in English. But I must say that personally I haven't experienced any problems when I came here first as a tourist, because that's how it started. My whole adventure here was because I was here as a tourist. I liked the country and the people so much that I decided to apply to become ambassador here. So there's an attraction also, a personal attraction that I had as a tourist. And what I would like to say is also that there's a challenge for your country in terms of strategy. If on the one hand you want to reach the global figure, the magical figure of 4 million tourists by 2020, you need to think also, is this the only thing? Is this really the quantity that you want? Or must you also focus, and I think you should, on the quality? And maybe there's a kind of contradiction in wanting to achieve the big numbers and to improve also at the same time the quality of the service. Because if people are happy, if they are satisfied, and they see that there's so much to be seen that they couldn't see the first time, these people will come back. And that's a challenge, to make sure that tourists who come to visit Sri Lanka will say at the end of their stay, oh, I haven't seen enough, there's more to see, I will come back. Maybe not next year, but maybe in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. And that population need to be able to attract them also.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think we are nearing our time, but doesn't it warm my heart that Ambassador first came as a tourist and then applied to come here as an ambassador? I think we must give our panel a round of applause. Thank you very much. Today, in our discussion, I have noted down these key points that we have to look after our country, what is given by nature, to look after it, and to focus on diversifying, further advertising, and continuous improvement of quality of accommodation. We must maintain our clean beaches, improve our transportation, ensure safety for tourists, and good training for our workforces who are working in the tourism industry. Here I must mention that not only people who work directly in the tourism industry, but indirectly, like police officers, other people who are in a roundabout way help the tourist industry. And we must also give the tourists the value for money, as Joanna said, as well as, of course, in any country, you must give value for money. And to make sure that people want to come back. Our discussion is over. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to our eminent panel. Thank you.
Whilst we thank the panel chair and the panelists, I would request you all to please remain on stage because we need to present a few tokens of appreciation to our panelists and the panel chair. So to do the honors, I would like to invite Mr. Upali Ratnayaka, Director General, SLTDA, and Mr. Kasun Aberatna, Secretary General, Vice President to the Strategic Direction, Production Development and Partnerships and Tourism Leaders Summit and International Tourism Research Conference. Can we have our panelists and the panel chair to please remain on stage to receive the tokens of appreciation? Thank you very much to our panel chair and the panelists, and thank you so much, Mr. Upali Ratnayaka and Mr. Kasun Abenayaka.